case for fracking. We have spent, many of us, 3, almost 4 years now, researching this issue, reading the reports, looking at the science, becoming semi-experts on issues that range from hydrology to geology to aquifer systems to the impact of chemicals on the human health system, to local legislation and federal legislation. But with all that work, we still don't know what fracking really means for a community. We really don't understand fully the impacts, both economic and emotional. We don't because we don't live with it. And that's unfortunate because we have to make some very important and urgent decisions. We all need to decide what we want for our property, what we want for our community, what we want for our state. And we also need to decide what we are going to expect from our elected officials. Do we want them to support hydrofracking, to encourage hydrofracking, or do we want them to protect us from it? Without having that first-hand knowledge of what fracking really means, we are at a disadvantage for making that decision. But we are very fortunate tonight. We have these good folks in Pennsylvania who've been generous enough to come out here and share their stories, to explain to us what it really is like, what hydrofracking looks like, what it smells like, what it tastes like, what it sounds like. And I suggest to you that after you hear their stories, that decision-making is going to be much easier. We can do all the research we want, we can look at all the scientific studies we want, and then we can argue whether the study was valid, whether it was incomplete, whether it was biased. We can say that our neighbor who supports hydrofracking has a financial interest and discount their opinion. We can say that our neighbor who's opposed to hydrofracking had a predisposition or has an agenda and discount their opinion. But again, when you hear these stories, I don't think you're going to be able to discount those stories. I think you will not be able to argue that those stories are truthful. They're told with great candor, and they're told from the heart. And that is worth much more than those scientific studies. And I believe that those stories will help all of us make the kind of decisions that we need to make, the kind of decisions that are extremely urgent. We've all heard the buzz, we've heard rumors that the state will begin permitting hydrofracking as early as Labor Day. Then we've heard denials from the governor's office, and we get mixed signals. The reality is, unless we take action as citizens, we will see hydrofracking in upstate New York at some point, and that point will probably be sooner rather than later. So again, that decision looms. So I really hope that what you hear tonight will help you make those decisions. So rather than give long, lengthy introductions, I would like these great ladies to tell their stories and to explain what their life is like with hydrofracking for you. So first, let me introduce, let's see who we have going first, Carol French and Carolyn Knapp, both from Bradford County, Pennsylvania. I really appreciate the fact that they're here tonight. Please welcome them.
Good evening. I am an organic dairy farmer, small operation, live in Bradford County. I was born in Flushing, Queens. I moved to Pennsylvania in 1984 with my husband and then 3 children. We moved to provide a better life for our family. By better, I do not mean more money. I mean fresh air, pristine water, open spaces, and good quality soil to raise the food my family would consume. I believe that both my husband and I would live the rest of our lives on our farm. The investment we made in our farm, our blood and sweat, was to be our retirement, our only large asset. I even requested that my ashes be spread on the garden I grew our food in. I was attached to our home and to our land. Excuse me. All of this has been shattered by what is occurring in our region. I fear I no longer will live the rest of my life on our farm. My husband and I talk daily about where we are going to move. Our lives have been uprooted because of the big change occurring in our region. I can tolerate change. After all, I moved from New York City to rural Pennsylvania. The only thing I missed was the income. Some things, like added traffic, that I do not like, that is currently going on, I would be able to tolerate. But put together and looked at in a cumulative fashion, the combination and rate of change is too drastic and life-changing to accept. When you combine the traffic, the noise, the air pollution, soil pollution, the rapid influx of people, the increase in crime rate, the increase in litter, and most important one, the ever real threat of your water source being contaminated at any moment in time, to any degree possible, is one that I cannot and will not accept.
I'm a dairy farmer. I lived my entire life in Bradford County. We leased our land in August of 2006. Since then, it has been released of April 2012. Our thoughts during the leasing process was that we have leased for the last 40 years, and they've drilled pockets in certain areas of Bradford County, but they have told us that we really didn't find anything there, so we thought that they were just throwing their money away. We were concerned only really about our fences and the penalties that might occur because of the federal, the penalties that were derived from the agricultural programs that the farmers were enrolled in. We also were thinking about, should the gas companies decide to drill, we would be rich. It allowed us to dream, the dream that the farmers never really get to dream. If anything went wrong, we could rely on the state agency to enforce the laws and protect us. We were not aware of drilling procedures called slick water hydrofracking and what it involved. All we knew was the drilling of the little wells that looked like they were drilling for water. Carolyn and I are presenting a new presentation tonight. It's a very personal presentation for me. I will be sharing some tragic moments that has taken place in my life this year, and Carolyn will be sharing information that we found recorded in the DEP's office. Hopefully, you can understand the correlation between our stories and the relationship a landowner has for the gas company. Our presentation is going to be called The Sacrifice. As you well know, Terry Engelder, however you say his name, has been going around toting that the natural gas industry needs to practice, and they will need to do some necessary sacrifice for Pennsylvania as they work and to get it right. Dr. Terry Engelder. This is my water. My water changed March 15th of last year, 2011. With my water changing, my daughter got sick. My daughter got sick in October of 2011. She had a high fever for 3 days. She lost 10 pounds in 7 days with diarrhea. She was experiencing sharp pains throughout her abdomen. The doctor would not document in her records that we had 9 gas wells surrounding our home and our water turned white. The doctors found a high white cell count in her urine, but not in her blood. They also found excessive amounts of free-floating fluid in her lower abdomen. Her right ovary, her spleen, and her liver were very enlarged. She moved to Tennessee. Our neighbor a mile behind us had the same symptoms. Her spleen burst in 3 days. My cows drink that water as well. That's good. DEP also has refused to test the water. I have contacted them, they will not come. This is what our cow looks like. Several of our cows, the skin just lifts off. They drink that water. We don't know why. On the left is Carolyn's husband's leg. Their water has changed, but it doesn't turn white. My water turns white. Sand will settle at the bottom of the glass, and then it's like a green moss at the top, and after 3 hours, it will jump. That's my arm. You can see my arm if you want to see it later on. The health impacts that we have noticed in Bradford County are rashes, intestinal problems, nosebleeds, fatigue, enlarged livers and spleens. With our cows, we are having experiencing reproductive problems. Next. Yeah, this is the water buffalo. We want to set the story straight. We want you to understand what's fact and what's fiction. We have had people come to Bradford County taking pictures of calf hutches sitting in front of the barn thinking that this farmer had contaminated water with 10 or 11 water buffaloes in front of his farm, when actually it was just calf hutches. So we showed you a picture of a water buffalo. What I want to ask you is, would your property value be affected if your water changed? Who pays for replacing your water? Who pays for the independent water testing? This will increase your usage of electricity. First of all, your property value, we know, changes from 80%. It goes down. Who pays for the replacement of your water? The gas company has, but then they stop paying, and we know of landowners that were saddled with a $7,200 bill for 2 months' worth of water supply to them. Who pays for the independent water test? Now Carolyn is going to read a little ditty that she found.
I just got something off the internet. It's called Folks Drill for Truth, Pay for the Water Test. And it's a story about a gentleman who talks about what he's going through, but this particularly struck out at me. It says the Pennsylvania, after he made a phone call to the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, they do the Tier 2 test only for the wells, the gas companies. The Penn State recommends that you do a Tier 3 test, which is more testing, but now Penn State Cooperative Extension is giving the advice to people that they are recommending the Tier 3 testing for your water twice a year for the next 30 years if there's fracking activity near your home. Now, I don't know if you all know, but that Tier 3 testing costs $1,000, so pencil that out, and it's going to cost you $60,000 for the next 30 years to make sure that your water is safe drinking.
Okay. How did we get to this point so far, where we're watching the health risk, the crime?
We have a feedback here.
Yeah. And why is my water changing? Was it because of the leases that we signed and the agreements without privileged knowledge? How are you guys making out with this? Is it bothering you guys? Is this a little bit better? Okay, I'll try it this way. Are laws enough to protect our safety and our well-being? Do you as a landowner have training in corporate knowledge? Do you know the true value of your property? Do you understand the power of the company you are dealing with? The only power that they possess is the power that you give them. Did you give the power to control the subsurface when signing a lease? Does a subcontracting company have the right to conduct activities under the lease you signed? Does a gas company have the right to sue a landowner if he refuses to sign a lease? Hopefully we can cover these questions at the next, throughout our presentation.
Okay. This particular slide means a lot to me because of the things that I've been finding out about the gas industry. And I know you all know the phrase, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And this is just one of the definitions that I got off of the internet, and I think it says it the best. And my position is that most of what they tell you is part truth. There are many instances where the natural gas industry has only told part truths, such as fracking has been around for 60 years, so it's well tested. There is no private drinking well contamination, free from foreign oil, energy independence, the length of the time this gas will last or supply, I don't understand at what level of consumption they're talking about, because they say it will last us for the next 60 years, but if we increase everything to consume more natural gas, I don't think they've penciled that in. And the jobs that are being created is another one of the half-truths. We need to start asking more questions, demanding more answers. Don't allow the DEP to carry on their business as usual. Talk about the things we are finding, as we're doing. Carol and I have found a lot down at the DEP. The industry uses a phrase with DEP that says they're working cooperatively together, and let me tell you, they are. Don't allow yourself to accept information given to you by anyone without further investigation. Everyone, for us, is suspect, and I think they should be for you too, and you need to find out things for yourself. If you choose to be a leaseholder, be a wise leaseholder. This takes a lot of work, it can be done, and there is a lot of propaganda going around. Next one. Okay, this is another slide of mine, and I'll give you a little story about this. After I leased the first time in 2006, in 2009, I believed in this whole gas thing. I became a Chesapeake stockholder. And at the end of 2009, I was delivered this stockholder's report. And I opened it up, and I read the report, and in this report, I can read it out loud. The natural gas and oil business involves a variety of operating risks, including the risk of fire, explosions, blowouts, pipe failures, abnormally pressured formations, and environmental hazards such as oil spills, natural gas leaks, ruptures or discharges of toxic gases. If any of these should occur, Chesapeake could suffer substantial loss due to injury or loss of life, severe damage to or destruction of property, natural resources and equipment, pollution or other environmental damages, cleanup responsibilities, regulatory investigations, and penalties and suspension of operations. Our horizontal and deep drilling activities involve greater risk of mechanical problems than vertical and shallow drilling operations. And when I read this, I felt betrayed. As a landowner, I entered into the lease and I was not given any of that information. That's when things started to change.
This is my sister, Mary. She was murdered while trying to get away from an abusive relationship in June, about 2 months ago. As an abuser is someone who takes away another person's right to choose. They're controlling their options, psychological threats, asserting their power on them, and possessing experiences and additional training, permitting the abuser the right to control another human being. In my mind, Mary became a sacrifice. I had to go to a counselor and ask, how did this happen? And he explained to me 75% of the people that try to get away are murdered. And as he described the abuser by possessing the psychological threats, I realized that I was going to be a victim as well. Not the same way as Mary, but as the relationship I had with the gas company. I want to ask you, is the gas company using these same tactics on the landowners as the abuser would on his victim? If you go and look up the power and control wheel, you will see the tactics used. And you will realize, if you're living in Bradford County, Susquehanna County, Wayne County, Sullivan County, they are using the exact same tactics.
This is one of the things we have found in going to our county courthouse. This happened probably about 3 years ago. I was doing research on my daughter's deed and trying to find out who exactly owned it, because that can be a difficult task, and found that her lease was assigned 12 times. Now, I thought it was assigned and assigned, but then when I read into the assignments, what happened was Chief Oil, who was the one who the whole lease was assigned to, then took portions of their royalties and assigned it to other people. Some of them are family trusts, most of them are out of the country. All of them get a portion of the royalties that's below my daughter's land. And how this goes is when you start out with your land, you own 100% of what's below the ground. The theory is to the center of the earth, that's what you own. Then, when you sign a lease, typically in Pennsylvania, you reserve 12.5%, and the rest of that lease goes to the gas company or the producer. In my daughter's case, they took that and assigned that 12 times. So all of those get a share of her royalties.
Okay, with this chart, it's very important. At the bottom, you'll see a little sliver. That is the post-production and production costs taking out of your royalties. Chesapeake is now holding informative meetings down in Bradford County, trying to get the landowners to understand why Chesapeake is deducting 90% of the cost from their royalties. They are fuming. The people are fuming because that much money is being taken out of their royalties. Post-production costs. You know, I tried to think about how to inform you because when they came along and talked about post-production costs, I had no clue what that meant. So what I found is any activity prior to drilling, such as road construction, lawsuits, permits, seismic testing, those can be deducted from your royalties. Production costs is the pipeline construction, dehydration, separation, and transportation of gas, and etc. Okay, you got it.
I think the other thing that I quickly want to add is you have to take into consideration this with the leasing is that it gets assigned, and also the production costs. Sometimes in these leases that were signed, they don't share in the production costs. They get it without production costs. So my argument has been, and I think people ought to be standing up and shouting this or getting together, is that they need to find an accountability and a verifiable, accountable from the gas companies of what their production costs are. Because when you get sent that royalty check and they have all these deductions, who are we to know what those deductions are and whether we're getting 100% of them, whether we're getting 50% of them, or whatever? There is no verifiable way unless you do an accounting on the company. Okay.
The gas companies face it. It's a business and they're there to make a profit. Gas companies are, they generate money from stocks. They hedge the market. And in my mind, we've talked about this for the last 2 years, when the gas company is hedging the market, I believe it's insider trading because they are controlling the amount of gas going through those lines going to market. If they want to shut the lines down, that's hedging the market so it will go higher, they will bet higher. If they want to flood the market, they will bet against their own product and make money. That's what Aubrey McClendon just did. That's how he made $200 million. He flooded the market, he hedged against his own company. Also, they generate money by sales of the subsurface and other formations. When you do a lease, you should only do a lease for the Marcellus Shale. We have learned that there are so many other layers underneath that they want to extract from. You should negotiate every formation. These gas companies are selling to China for Marcellus and also maybe 5% to the Onondaga. We have no control. Once you sign that lease, it's an open-end story for them. They can make tons of money. Now, one attorney out of Williamsport told us one time that for every 2% on 100 acres, the gas company is averaging, for the sale, $8 million. So we sold them 87.5% of our 100% pie. We only kept 12.5. And I can tell you right now, I made only $13,600. Am I mad? No. At the time I was happy. fell a fool to a lie.
And you also have to be careful, because now what's happening in our county is they're doing some very interesting and creative financing. They're mortgaging a lot of the properties. Some of them are mortgaging the surface. The majority are mortgaging the subsurface. What they do is they have, well, there's currently the one loan we do have is a $5 billion loan. That's upon approximately 1,000 properties in Bradford County. That is an open-end mortgage, which is a revolving line of credit for Chesapeake. It's only on the subsurface, it's on the pipes, and it's on whatever wellhead there might be, but it has implications that go far beyond what people understand as to whether or not you have clear title when and if you decide to sell or try to refinance.
And in the state of Pennsylvania, when they come in for directional drilling, if the gas company, which Chesapeake and Talisman have, chose not to pay, some of the bills exceed over $196,000. But because you signed a lease, you become a prudent partner in Pennsylvania. So if the partner chooses not to pay that bill, the farmer, usually the landowner that has the well on him, the mechanics lien will be against him as well. In the state of Pennsylvania, if you do not pay the mechanics lien in 2 years, you are subject to bankruptcy. What the bankruptcy entitles is that you will lose your 12.5% interest in the subsurface. Yes. This is a production unit that we were showing you guys. Most landowners will not see all of their land in a production unit and will not receive royalties on all their land. We are aware of a farmer that has 1,000 acres and only 1/10 of an acre was put in a production unit. That's to hold his lease. He generates $1.20 a year in royalties. There is no regulation in how production units are formed here. If you guys want gas industry in your town or your state, you better get some regulations on how the production units are formed. Liability, it says here, I can't see that.
If a gas well is on your property, are you liable for damages?
The liability depends on the language of your lease. Also be careful if you've got a good lease where you hold the liability on the gas company, you will see surface use agreements come through, and that will cancel out, or they call it supersede, any language in your lease.
The one with, will you receive royalties if you are on a pooling declaration? In our area, they're putting people into pooling units. The well is not going to production. They're holding you by just virtue of the pooling units. In some cases, they give you shut-in royalties, which generally amount to $5 a year per acre. They can shut you in for as long as they want. Some of the leases stipulate they have to put it online for a little while, but then they can take it offline again. So there are just creative ways that they're doing this type of holdback on actual production because of the economy, because of the price of gas, because of a lot of reasons. They're also doing some creative recording. They are actually backdating pooling units. In other words, they'll create a pooling unit and they won't record it, and they'll say they created it 4 months ago.
Therefore, let's say your lease expired in April. They could create a pooling declaration in January and hold your lease because your lease was about to expire. Like Carolyn said about the, what did you say? I don't know.
It says, will the production unit stay the same size?
No.
No. Don't ever count it to stay the same size. You could have 100 acres. In our case, because of our regulations, we can have 100 acres one day and 2 the next.
So as a landowner, you want to behave yourself because that's another way the gas company can control you. If you are misbehaving, you have 100 acres in your unit. Next day, like you said, you can have 2 acres in it. You cannot count on what your royalty payment will be. It fluctuates.
And that's, again, something that needs to be put in the lease if you wanted to.
Also, go back from it. Can you do that?
I'll try.
Okay, we did it. I want you to pay attention to this part here. This is one parcel right here. It comes across here. Notice how it's cut out here, okay? That's a 200-acre parcel. Yeah, I'm coming back. I'm running. Okay, so now flip. 200-acre parcel. Okay, yeah, we're putting this up here so you understand this is what is recorded in your courthouse. That farmer had 200 acres, only 19 acres of it is in a production unit. That's all he's going to get paid on is the 19 acres. That's it. So they don't play fair. This is a picture of a gas well cellar that we took down in Pittsburgh. It's pretty nasty. It's got some nasty water in it, just like my water. Okay, next. I'll tell you why. This is a squeeze job. Have you guys ever heard of a squeeze job? Okay. Dr. Tony Angrafia, that is a professor at Cornell, has talked about how the casing is not holding up. And right here we are showing you Terry Township, Bradford County. It's a 24-mile span. There's 68 wells drilled. 23 of them are squeeze jobs. That means 23 wells, casings have failed. In that area, down by the Paradise Road, that's the one guy that had the water buffalo that we showed you before. That's because of the casing failing. So when the gas company says that we do not have any problems with our casing, we know better because we went to the DEP office and we pulled the squeeze jobs. It's there.
We also got some more documents. We have shut-in surface casing pressure test analysis. This is all of the testing they did on all of the suspected studies. They call them studies, even though they know there's something identifiably wrong with them, they call them studies. So this is that's that, and as a result of this, in one of their consent order agreements, Chesapeake was required to do a corrective action plan for well evaluation and potential remediation. Now, this potential remediation has become more than potential because there are people that are actually having to go through this plan.
Can you define squeeze?
You were going to the next slide.
Next slide. This is a Schlumberger, from the Schlumberger glossary. It's the process of forcing a cement slurry through holes or splits in the casing or liner. And it's done when there's the integrity of the well casing, something goes wrong. It could be in the drilling process, it could be in the casing process, it could be in the fracking process. It happens in a lot of processes. What we're finding mostly is it happens in the actual casing process, where there, for some reason, because we don't know what's underground, there's a void in the land, and instead of the cement going down where it's supposed to and back up, it goes in, and they lose cement. And they call, what do they call them? I found another, a potential thief zone. They call it a thief zone. The industry calls it a thief zone, where the land sucks in the cement instead of casing it properly. And in some cases, like in my daughter's area, there's actually a gas migration that came up somewhere else. In fact, Chesapeake has admitted to losing an unknown amount of gas because of something that went wrong in the casing.
And Carolyn and I were arguing, let's go back to the royalties. If the gas is escaping in the Susquehanna River, in the Tawanda Creek, which we do know, you're not getting paid for that methane, guys. It's coming out of your area, under your ground, but it's escaping, and you don't get paid for it. Another thing I wanted to talk about with the casing was, I know that there's a casing that's gone bad when you watch 40 cement trucks go by your house. We jump in the car and we follow them, and then we can tell you exactly what well it has a bad casing. Now the Rexford well is in Rome, Pennsylvania, and we watched the squeeze job take place for 8 weeks. It is because the 2H well was drilled first successfully. When they drilled the 5H well, so much pressure was applied that it could destroy the casing on the 2H well. So that's one thing that we did find in the DEP office. Next. Okay. We were told, we've been talking about the food because I milk my dairy cows. My milk still goes to market. I worry about what's in my milk. I do not drink my milk. I have told our milk marketing co-op, are you going to test it? I've asked the EP to test the water. Nobody comes. I want you guys to think, here's a stump that is by the Vinoy well site in Bradford County where it is subject to 500,000 gallons of frac fluid that's spilt there, and then 2 weeks later, 500 gallons of hydrochloric acid. The EP told Chesapeake to cut the trees down and then bury them. They were going to bury up a problem. What if this was a maple tree? This is in March. What if they had these tapped? Would your maple syrup be safe? Beef products, poultry. We're talking about the vegetables because the injection wells that are around, the nuts that come off these trees, my dairy products, the cotton that you wear on your back. How do you know that you, as a consumer, are consuming safe food?
I have two things to add. Being from the organic side of it, I have been pressuring my certifier and different organizations in my state to take a stand. You know, tell me what you're going to do, help support us. And I want to give a good shout out PASA, which is the Pennsylvania Association for Sustainable Agriculture. Although it hasn't been advertised and I have asked for it in the newspaper, they have a statement of unconventional natural gas extraction, and it's a long statement, and I'll just read a paragraph of it. It says, PASA recognizes its mission extends far beyond the edge of field and pasture. This work encompasses the development of and education around healthy food systems for both urban and rural communities. Unconventional gas drilling affects local farmers and farms, and the food they produce, and the consumers who eat it. And they're calling for a moratorium. No fight. NOFA, which happens to be in your state, Northeast Organic Farming Association of New York, just came out with a statement against it. Theirs is a lot stronger. I urge you to read it. What it says is, we hereby resolve that we reject horizontal high-volume slick-water hydrofracking technology as an acceptable human activity. We call for a worldwide agreement to stop, and they go on to talk about how it is not only affecting the surface, but what we are possibly doing to things we don't know what we're doing underneath, not only on water aquifers, but ecological happenings under the earth that we might be destroying. So I challenge you all to read this and support NOFA. They've taken a stand on it as well.
This is one of our other many sacrifices that a lot of people don't take in consideration when considering leasing their land. It is the community sacrifice. I'm not going to read you the sign because we're really pushing. I got 1 minute left. This is a sign Bruce Kennedy put up. He lives in East Smithfield. He was really for the gas development. He also signed a pipeline agreement. Then the unthinkable happened. The diesel and hydraulic spill occurred on his property. Bruce had several discussions with the EP and the gas company, which ended up in heated arguments. Bruce placed the sign on the town square that he rented, so everyone would be aware of what was happening to him. At one point, Bruce felt threatened, and he took refuge by the sign. Later on that night, 5 state troopers arrived and handcuffed him. He was not arrested, but he was admitted into the behavioral center. He was diagnosed as being bipolar within 3 days. Anybody in the medical profession knows you cannot diagnose bipolar in 3 days. The township since has charged Bruce $500 for road damage, the damage that was caused by the gas company by removing their faulty equipment. The gas company claims that they were afraid of a man with bipolar. So now Bruce is now in a lawsuit against the township for the payment of the road. This is just one of the many stories we could tell you, but we have 45 minutes. Normally we talk about 2 hours. So
The next one is some of our solutions that...
China.
Oh, China, okay. I'm supposed to talk about Okay, in the spring of this year, I was fortunate enough to be able to travel to China with my son. My sister-in-law invited us to come to meet her family. China was awesome, but there was something that I cannot forget. The country is very dependent on bottled water for drinking. They heat and sterilize all the water they consume, other than bottled. Yet they bathe and wash their dishes in unfiltered water. Their contamination and pollution is at levels that are hard to imagine unless you've been there. You do not see the blue skies. It's almost impossible to see the stars at night. And everyone buys and consumes bottled water on a daily basis. That is not the future I envision for my children and their children. Already in Pennsylvania, I have seen families with their water source contaminated, and I do not know how they're dealing with it. For most, there is nothing being done for them. Industry's answer is a filtration system. Is that what I am expected to live with for the rest of my life, to leave my children and their children? And does it really filter it all? Are we expected to accept filtration and bottled water in exchange for an energy supply to fill our ever-growing consumptive needs? I have talked with my family about this, and they have said they were willing to give up using more, try to find ways to substitute renewable energy for fossil fuels. The challenge is for every person to look at your yearly consumption and try to find ways to decrease your consumption instead of expecting to be it there forever. If you choose to increase it, find a way to do it with renewable energy. We live in a time where we expect it to always be there. And after visiting China, I know that it will not be here in the future for those that will be able to afford it only. And that will not be me or my children and most of you in this room. We should only be extracting what is safely in the ground for emergencies. I do not feel that our lack of an alternative renewable energy plan for this country is sufficient justification to extract the fuel, knowing the risks, because we did not have enough foresight to plan for an alternative, non-fossil fuels for our country. And
like PL Gas, we are aware of all the stories, and we didn't share many of them with you tonight, but we are also searching for solutions, and we'd like to share some with you, and hopefully you can think about them.
okay, the full disclosure of everything put down the hole. In our research, that is the most important thing, and what people have to realize is you have to start not just with the fracking. You're talking about the cementing, the drilling. There is so much stuff that's put down the hole. We need to have everything disclosed. The drilling fluids, the cementing stuff, the fracking stuff, everything. Chemical identifier in each well for anything that goes down the hole. During the drilling process, everything that goes down that hole should have a chemical identifier in it, so we know if it comes up somewhere else where it's coming from. And trust me, I've talked to experts. This can be done. The industry will do it to another industry if they feel like they're stealing from them. So we can, and it has been done in New Jersey, I know that, so it can be done. Full disclosure of all operations on a well pad. In other words, I'm asking for everybody to know and be able to know what's going on in that well pad at all times. There should be something posted on that well site when you go in, so you know what operation is going on at that time and what stage they're in. Because we don't find out about things until sometimes 6 months to a year later at the DEP. Full disclosure of all squeeze jobs and casing problems. You don't hear about those in the newspapers. More landowner control over production units. We went over that. More forms, more focus on alternative energy. Our county has this energy plan, this gas task force. Well, where is the alternative energy task force? Communicating with neighbors and sharing our knowledge. People, that's the only way it's going to happen. People sometimes don't want to talk, but keep talking, because eventually you're going to hit something. I know that everybody deserves to have their own right to do with what their land, but you have neighbors, you need to work with them, and trust me, least or not, your water can get contaminated.
And what you do will affect your neighbor, and what your neighbor signs will affect you. So if you're stubborn and you don't want to lease, and your neighbor does, and the gas well goes on your neighbor's property, you may have contaminated water. The other thing I was also thinking about is, are you willing to be the sacrifice? That's what this whole thing was about. Now you know how they control us. They control us through the money. They control us by threatening us. Think about that. what are you willing to lose?
One last slide. I was at the Philadelphia Zoo this past week, and I saw this sign, and it just struck me out. We need to care first. We need to act on that caring and do what we believe is right, and we need to demand change. That's it.
Great question and answer. Please ask us about the jobs. We never covered that, okay? Ask us about the jobs.
Thank you, Carolyn. And I know you have a lot of questions, so please hold them for just a little while longer. I know we all look forward to the questions and the answers. It is very easy to be overwhelmed by all the information that's being thrown at you about hydrofracking. If you're feeling overwhelmed, I have a suggestion. Ignore everything the environmentalists tell you. Ignore everything organizations like ours tells you. Ignore everything the industry tells you, and ignore everything the media tells you. And instead, listen to people like Carolyn, because they know the truth. And their only motivation for being here is a deep and genuine concern for their neighbors. Thank you, Carolyn.